So yeah, let's start with the reproductive system. So we didn't get to finish this last time. So
No.
the reproductive system allows living things to produce offsprings or babies. And male and female both have different kinds of reproductive system. So here are some functions of the reproductive system. One function is to produce the gametes. So the male or the female reproductive system produces sperm or egg. And reproductive system also allows for fertilization. Fertilization is when the sperm and egg meet in the female reproductive tract, specifically called the oviduct, and it fuses to form a fertilized egg or the zygote. And pregnancy and childbirth are also involved. So in female, the fertilized egg implants to the uterus and develops into a fetus. And the reproductive system also controls our hormones. So it produces hormones, testosterone for male and estrogen for female. And there are also developments. So it plays a role in the development of secondary sexual characteristics such as body hair, muscle mass, breast development, etc. And finally, it takes part in menstruation. So in female, the shedding of the uterine line occurs if fertilization does not occur. So here is the male reproductive system. So yeah, there's the testes or testicles. It produces sperm and the hormone, the testosterone. And there's the scrotum, which protects and regulates the temperature of the testes. There's also the epididymis, which stores and matures sperm after it is made. And there's also the vas deferens, or also called the sperm duct, which is basically a tube. You can see this tube that transports mature sperm to the urethra. So let's watch this video and it'll tell you a little bit more about the structure of the male reproductive system.
Reproductive system. The male reproductive system is
So yeah, that was about the male reproductive system. And you can just look at the structures and let's solve a quick question about the male reproductive system. So based on what we've seen, which part of the human body stores the sperm temporarily? I think I heard A, that is correct. Yeah, it is the epididymis. So remember that sperms are made in the testicles, then it is stored in the epididymis, and it is transferred or moved by the vast difference. So yeah, great job. It stores and matures sperm. And scrotum is actually where it protects and regulates the temperature of the testes. And the prostate gland is the part where it produces fluid. And the sperm duct transports the sperm. Now let's move on to the female reproductive system. So there's the uterus, the center of the womb. It's a muscular or hollow organ where a fertilized egg implants to the and the fetus grows. So the fertilized egg implants in the uterus. And there are two ovaries where ovulation occurs. And this is where eggs are produced. And hormones are also produced, like estrogen. And there is this tube called the fallopian tube. You can see these two tubes right here. Those connect the ovaries to the uterus, like this. And then this is the place where fertilization usually occurs, where the sperm meets the egg. And there are other like outer structures like cervix, the lower part of the uterus, and it's a birth canal opening during delivery. And here is the overall structure. You can look on the left, the diagram over here. But I think I have a better structure over here. But this one is moving into the BECE test. So there is quite a lot to name and label. But can you guys name each of the parts labeled 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, and 8? So what is 1? What is this structure called? 같이 얘기하면 좋아. 웃고. So let's look at this again. So over here, the structure, what is it called? So we're looking at this hollow muscular structure. Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's called the uterus or the womb. Yeah, nice job. And what is this part called in number 2? This path.
Fallopian tube.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, great job. That's the fallopian tube. So it leads the ovaries to the uterus. Now let's look at number 5. What is this part called? Oh, yes, great job. That's called the ovary. Number 5. And let's look at number 6 next over here. Now if this is the male reproductive system, what is this part called? So if we look back a little bit to here, oh yeah, I think I heard vas deferens. That is correct. Yeah, great job. So this part right here is called the vas deferens, the sperm duct. So it acts to transfer the sperm to the uterus. Now let's look at 7. What is this structure called?
Tennis.
Yeah, good job. It's the penis. It's the external structure. Finally, let's look at 8. This one. Oh, yes. Yeah, that's the testicles. So the testis or the testicles, they produce the sperm. And they also produce the hormones. Remember the testosterone. So let's look at some of the functions. So does anyone remember the function of 3 or cervix? So yeah, let's just do a quick review. So if we look at this slide right here, let's do a quick review. So remember that uterus is where the fertilized egg implants. So it attaches here. And this is the place where the fetus, and the ovaries, is where the eggs are produced. Ovaries are where the eggs are produced. And also estrogens are produced. So egg plus hormones are produced here in the ovaries. And then there is the fallopian tube over here. So this is where fertilization occurs, where the sperm meets the egg. And the cervix over here is the lower part of the uterus, this part. So this part helps in opening during delivery. And finally, there is the vagina, or the passage for menstrual flow and childbirth. It's called the birth canal. So yeah, that is the structure and the function of each part of the female reproductive system. We can review one more time of the male reproductive system. So you can see testes, testicle is where sperm is made. And also the hormone, remember, the testosterone. And then over here, it's stored in this epididymis over here. Sperm is stored and matured. And it passes through the vas deferens. yeah, that is basically the function, the basic functions of the male reproductive system. So yeah, I hope this makes sense for everyone, and I'll be moving on to the ovulation and the menstrual cycle. So ovulation is when an egg is released from the ovary. And menstrual cycle is the whole process that prepares the body for pregnancy each month. And it is controlled by the hormone levels that change during each month. So let's look at this video, and this talks about how the menstrual cycle happens and what leads to that. So let's look at this video.
Menstruation. Also,
That was the menstrual cycle. So you can see that it happens, like periods happen, menstruation happens because there is no sperm that the egg met, so the lining sheds. But if the egg is met, fertilization occurs. So fertilization, we've learned it happens in the fallopian tube for here. So first, when in the beginning of the cycle where ovulation occurs, or the egg is produced, it takes a while for the eggs to travel down. And during that time, when the sperm meets the egg, fertilization occurs and it forms a zygote. Let's look at this video one more. It explains the process of fertilization.
Aunt Edna's is cozy, you thought. But then you found a room.
This animation is brought to you by the Nucleus Medical Art Lab.
So, yeah, that was the video about fertilization, and it is the process of how it occurs and how the fetus is made. So remember that first, there is this regular cycle of the menstrual cycle, and we know it is controlled and varies by the hormones. So remember that there are two main hormones that control in the female. So those are the estrogen, things like estrogen, and progesterone. So these two hormones control the levels, and it controls the 28th cycle of the ovulation and the menstruation. So during this period, when the egg successfully meets a sperm in the fallopian tube, this is where the fetus grows by cell division, and then it implants to the wall of the uterus, and that's where the baby grows. So yeah, let's look at this question. So name the labeled part where each of the following processes take place. So A, where does fertilization take place? Does anyone know?
Yes, yes, yes.
Production of sperm, where are they taken? Population, a taking place where? Hey!
So yeah, let's look.
Away question, they would you then
So this is fertilization. Yeah. And it happens over here, right? And what is this called?
Yes, you.
So yeah, where does fertilization occur? We've seen. So remember that fertilization is where the egg and the sperm meets, and it happens in the fallopian tube, right? So it happens in this channel. So that's what I was pointing at here. So this tube is called the fallopian tube, and this is where the sperm goes in. The sperm goes in and then meets the egg over here. Let's see. That's the fertilization. It happens in the fallopian tube. Where does production of sperm happen in our body? The production of sperm.
Yes, yes.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah. It happens in the testes. Great job, yeah. And finally, where does ovulation happen? So remember, this is where the egg is produced. 근데 거치 보고 기키드. Yeah, if we go back a couple slides, remember that ovulation happens here, right? And this is the process where egg is produced. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. It happens in the ovaries. These are called the ovaries. So fertilization happens in the fallopian tube, production of sperm happens in testes, and ovulation occurs in ovaries. So yeah, these are the three functions and places where each of these happen. So it is important to know. Yeah. Yeah, did you have a question? Or I cannot hear you if you are speaking. Or let's finish the rest of the question and I will ask for questions. So here it says to name two infectious diseases that affect both male and female reproductive system. So I've listed some common diseases. All of these are called the sexually transmitted disease or STD. Things like syphilis, herpes, canker, and etc. All of these are from STDs. And the question also asks, what is teenage pregnancy? So teenage pregnancy is when females or girls under the age of 20 get pregnant. And state two causes of this, state two causes of teenage pregnancy, you can say things like poverty, lack of sex education, rape or peer pressure, etc. So yeah, this was the last question of the reproductive system. So do you have any questions so far for Ivan about like the male reproductive system or the female reproductive system?
Yeah.
So yeah, are there no questions for this? Then I will be happy to move on, but always feel free to ask me questions anytime. So now we will be moving on to DNA, genetics, genes, and chromosomes. So we will talk about what they are. But let's first review the cell. So cells are building blocks of all living things. And the human body is made up of 30 trillion cells. And each of the cell has two main parts. The cytoplasm, what is inside, and the nucleus. So nucleus is the control center of the cell. And the nucleus contains the DNA. And it controls the cell's activity, such as growth and reproduction. And there are many different kinds of cells, like cardiac cells, nerve cells, skin cells, muscle cells, and each of the cells have a different shape and function. So if we look over here, this is an example of a pancreas tissue. So we have the piece of pancreas over here, and these small circles you can see here, they are the cells of the pancreas. So you can see a lot of cells making up the pancreas. All these small cells. So this is usually how an organ and a tissue is made. So we have the individual cells in our body. And when there are a lot of cells gathered together, they form a tissue. and a lot of tissues together form an organ. And organs together form an organ system. And then a lot of organ systems combined form organisms. And we humans are also organisms. We have a lot of organ systems, organs in our body. But remember that every organ is consisted of tissues and cells within. So, yeah, before we get into DNA specifically, I wanted to clarify the difference between certain cells. So, a cell can be two types. One is prokaryote. A cell can be prokaryote, or a cell can be eukaryote. Humans have eukaryotic cells. We are over here. But bacteria, things like bacteria or things like that, microbiotes have prokaryotes. It's like microbes, bacteria, prokaryotes, and like humans and animals have eukaryotic cells. So this just lists some differences. This is what it looks like. So the prokaryotic cells are very simple. They do not have a nucleus, which is the center that stores DNA. So the DNA just floats in the cytoplasm. And prokaryotes are unicellular organisms, meaning that they are only made up of one cell. Just one cell is a prokaryote. An example, like I said, is like a bacteria or an archaea. That's the prokaryote. There's also the eukaryote. So eukaryotic cells are larger and more complex. They have a nucleus that stores the DNA, and they also have a lot of different organelles. Remember, in our cells chapter, we talked about different organelles, right? We talked about the mitochondria. We talked about the nucleus. We talked about the ER. And there are a lot of those inside the eukaryotes. And all plants, animals, and fungi are made up of eukaryotic cells. So yeah, everyone, let's answer this question about cells and eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells. So, which of the following organisms is prokaryotic? Does anyone remember?
Bacteria.
Yes, that's right. Great job. It's A, bacteria. It's the only prokaryotic cell here. Earthworm is eukaryotic. Fungus is also eukaryotes. And plants are also eukaryotes. So bacteria is the only prokaryote in this list. Yeah, they are unicellular. And remember that bacteria can live anywhere in soil, water, air, and bacteria, these things are even in our body. They're inside our body. And some bacteria are helpful, like bacteria in our intestines are helpful in digesting food. But some bacteria are harmful. They can cause diseases like infection or food poisoning. So yeah. Now let's get into what a DNA is. So our cells have chromosomes inside the nucleus. Remember, the nucleus is where the DNA is stored. And this is called a chromosome, this like X-shaped thing. And chromosomes are made up of DNA, which is a molecule that contains our genetic information. And different living things have different numbers and shapes of chromosomes. But humans, like all of us, have 46 chromosomes. Humans have 46, or 23 pairs. So we have 46 of these X-shaped chromosomes, and each chromosome is made up of DNA. So let's look. So of course, first, remember how fertilization occurs. So the sperm cell has 23 chromosomes. So this is 23. Human egg cell has 23. And when fertilization occurs, this combines. So it adds 23 plus 23. And humans therefore have 46 chromosomes. Yeah, this is just looking at how it occurs. And you can see the 46 chromosomes here. And you can also see that it has 23 pairs, so 46 in total. So let's look at this last pair, this 23rd pair right here. This pair is called the sex chromosomes. They determine a person's sex. So XY, like seen here, this will be a male. But if this is an XX, then the person will be female. So here, this part, the green part, all of these come from your dad. So this is from the male, from your dad. And all the purple part comes from your mom, or your mother. So that's why the Y comes from your father, and the X comes from your mother. So yeah, you can see the difference here, male versus female. Males have XY, and females have XX. And the 23rd pair, these are all paired up. But when chromosomes line up, there can sometimes be an error. So meiosis is where the sperm and egg cells are made, and during this process, a cell might end up with too many or too few chromosomes. And this leads to genetic disorders. An example is Down syndrome, and it is an extra copy of chromosome pair 21. So 21, it's supposed to have 2 chromosomes, but you can see this has 3 chromosomes. So this is called the Down syndrome. People with Down syndrome have widely recognized appearance, so there is a different appearance and they often have mild to moderate intellectual disabilities and developmental delays. But with proper care and support, people with Down syndrome can live a healthy and independent lives. But let's look at here the gametes versus a zygote. So sex cells are called the gametes. And the sperms and the egg cells are called the gametes. So gametes only have 23 chromosomes. But when the sperm and the egg come together during fertilization, they make a zygote. Over here. Zygotes have 46 chromosomes. So the half is from the father and the other half is from the mother. So gametes, remember, are sperms and eggs. They have 23 chromosomes. And when they combine by fertilization, they have 46 now. A cell has 46 chromosomes.
Right.
So gametes have only 23 chromosomes because of this division preparation stage called meiosis. So meiosis is a cell division that makes sex cells. So meiosis happens in the ovaries and the testes. During meiosis, a diploid cell, which is 46 chromosomes, divide to make a haploid cell, just a cell that only has 23 chromosomes. So all human bodies have 46 chromosomes, but in the ovaries, when meiosis happens, the egg is produced with 23 chromosomes. And similarly in males, in testes, meiosis occurs and the sperms have 23 chromosomes. So there's a difference between diploid and haploid cell you can see in these pictures. So diploid has two copies. There are always two copies in diploids that are in homologous pairs. So each of these are lined up, and this is from your father, and this is from your mother, and it's all lined up like this. But later, when gametes are needed, when sex cells are needed, it goes through the process of meiosis, and it produces haploids, which only have one copy. So that is the main difference between a diploid and a haploid. This process that occurs is called the meiosis. Yeah. So it divides into one copy only. So here's just a diagram of, you can see what happens over here. So we start with one diploid, and then eventually it leads into splits, and it splits into 4 haploid cells. So this is just the process of one diploid to four haploid. This is called meiosis. But it's different from mitosis, which is another type of cell division. But this is where a single parent divides into two identical daughter cells. So let's look at this diagram here. So humans have 46, starting with 46 chromosomes. But the end result are two diploid cells. So 46 just divides into two cells, both with 46 chromosomes. And this replication is important for growth, development, and repair of the body, as well as asexual reproduction in some organisms. 문이라도 좀 잘하셔. So meiosis versus mitosis, these are the differences. So mitosis just directly splits into two diploids, the 2N meaning diploid and 1N meaning haploid. You can see meiosis produces four haploids, and mitosis produces two diploids. So let's look at this video really quickly to see how this happens. So.
Airwick's vibrant fragrances are infused with 2 times more essential oils.
Gametes form from diploid cells through meiosis, never through mitosis.
So yeah, that was the difference between mitosis and meiosis. So for this part, what I want everyone to get out of is just that human bodies have initially diploids. Our bodies are made up of diploid cells, so containing 46 chromosomes, also in 23 pairs. This is a quick summary of everything. And then, when our body needs sex cells, when we need to produce another baby, both the father and mother goes through meiosis in their reproductive system. So this becomes haploids, 4 haploids, which is also called the sex cells, which has 23 chromosomes each. So this process is called meiosis, right? And then when these two, 123 from the mother, 123 from the father chromosome, by fertilization they combine to form another zygote of 46. And this reproduces, divides and divides by mitosis. Remember, mitosis gives 46 each. And that's how humans are formed. So that's why every cell in human body has 46 chromosomes. So let's move on now. I hope that made sense for everyone. But we're moving into DNA. So we're getting into the details of the DNA now. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. And DNA is the molecule that carries genetic information in all living things. So DNA gives instructions for how cells grow, work, and repair. DNA decides your hair color, height, blood type, and way more. And in eukaryotes, DNA is tightly packed into chromosomes. Remember, we talked about chromosomes already that are in diploid and haploid. But each chromosomes are made up of DNA. So what does that mean? So you can see this picture right here, right? So before, we just looked at this larger chromosome. This is a chromosome, this X. Remember, X is for chromosome. But each chromosome is made up of DNA. So these strands of this is called the DNA. And these DNA coil up, they're tightly packaged inside the chromosome. So DNA is coiled like this. DNA is like this. Yeah, and they form chromosomes as a tightly packed DNA. But DNA is double-stranded. So DNA has two strands right here, double-stranded. It's like a ladder, like a twisted ladder. See, this is what the DNA looks like. And DNA has a couple functions. The first function of DNA is to carry genetic information. So DNA stores all instructions needed for an organism to grow, develop, and live. DNA also controls the production of proteins. So it tells what proteins to make by the DNA. And proteins are very important because they help our body grow and stay strong. DNA also passes traits from the parents to the children. So DNA is inherited. Remember, one chromosome from the father, one chromosome for the mother. And each chromosome is made up of DNA. That's why you have your mother's eyes, for example, and your father's hair color, or many different kinds of combinations. So DNA is this really important and very interesting part in life. So let's look at this video about what DNA is and what chromosomes are.
The Fantastic Four First Steps is now streaming on Disney+.
I herald his beginning.
You've likely heard the words DNA.
So this video covered three main things, like we've seen. DNA, chromosomes, and gene. So DNA, we have a picture over here. It's shaped like this. It's double-stranded. And chromosomes are formed by packaged DNA or coiled DNA. So it's like this. And parents pass chromosomes to offsprings. And then there are also segments called the genes. So genes are certain parts of the DNA that codes for our traits. And there are multiple traits that can be determined by genes. Things like hair color, eye color, and skin color, protein production. And there are many different levels, like eye shape, nose shape, that are determined by the gene. So genes are just these like segments of DNA that codes for certain traits. And you can think of genes as books in the library where the chromosome is containing a lot of segments of genes. So in that segments, it codes for a lot of different traits. 크로모솜 맞아. 크로모솜이야, 엄마. But there can be gene mutations as well. So a gene mutation is a change in the DNA of a gene. So it can happen naturally when cells divide, or because of things like radiation or chemicals. Some mutations have no effect, but some can be really harmful. But some mutations can even be beneficial, can help organisms adapt to the environment. So examples of disease caused by gene mutation are sickle cell anemia, hemophilia, cystic fibrosis, and way more. So yeah, that was the end for our gene, DNA, and chromosome section. So do you have any questions for today? So any questions about the reproductive system, or about DNA, or about chromosomes or genes?
Another question. Hello. Any question? Okay, we have a question. Okay, I have a What is worry? How can
however, how can a bacterial help in making yogurt?
Can you repeat the question, please? So I heard prokaryote and bacteria. So yes, sorry.
How can a bacterial help in making yogurt?
Oh, so there are some bacteria that are helpful to eukaryotes or humans. So bacteria are always just unicellular prokaryotes, but bacteria in our intestines are helpful. They're called, some are E. coli. They're called the E. coli bacteria that are in our digestive system, and it protects our intestines by killing other bacteria that try to preventing other bacteria from entering our body. So in that way, bacteria can be helpful to our body. They help us protect from foreign bacteria. So
Okay.
yeah. Any other questions?
Yes. What is somatic cell?
So somatic cells are
Yeah.
diploid cells. So it talks about here, I think. But so somatic cell is just any body cell that is not a gamete, that is not a sex cell. So every somatic cell is a diploid. So for example, our hands are made up of somatic cells. Our muscles, our blood vessels are made up of somatic cells. Our nerve cells are made up of somatic cells, but all of them have diploids, or 2 copies of each chromosome. And it's every cell that is other than the sex cells or the gametes. Yeah, does that make sense? The somatic cell just equals our body cell. Somatic cells equals our body cells. Yeah. So non-sex cells.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. What is homologous?
So, yeah, homologous means the same. Homologous means the same. So, diploid talks about homologous pairs, right? These two are homologous pairs. And we can look at this picture right here. So we have lined up homologous pairs, the same pair, and this is from the father, and this is from the mother. So these two are same type of chromosome. So they have similar size and genes. So that's why these are called homologous pairs. So homologous, it means same or similar. And because dad's chromosomes, your father's chromosome, lines up with the similar mother's chromosome, this set is called a homologous pair. They are the same. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions for today?
Yes. What is the color of the sperm?
Sperm is so for sperm, there is no color. So there is a difference between a sperm. So this is a sperm right here. There's a difference between sperm and semen. So semen can look like whitish, milky color, but sperm doesn't have any colors, right? So semen is made up of, hundreds of sperms that is employed. And this is just what's made in the male reproductive system that produces this like whitish color that you might think about. Yeah. But sperm doesn't have any colors. Yeah. Does that answer your question? 그거 물어본 거 아니야. 아니, 그러면 더 헷갈려요. 그거 말했어. 아니, 그게 애들 다른 거 설명해 주면 더 헷갈려 한다고. 질문한 게 있으면 정확히 그걸 대답해 줘야지. Does anyone have any other questions? 그거 말했잖아. 그래. 한 번 더 말할까? So to clarify, the semen has billions of sperms inside, right? So semen has billions of sperm like inside. So that's what semen is, and that's what comes outside our body, right? For males, semen is what comes outside, but sperm is inside the semen. So it doesn't have any color that way. Yeah, any other questions for today? Yeah.
Please, what is sexual intercourse?
So yeah, sexual intercourse is where here, I think I put it here. So I think I just mentioned it here, but somewhere here. So this is just where the semen gets traveled to the uterus or the egg. So when a male and a female sleep together, and the male puts the sperm inside the female reproductive system. And yeah, that process is called, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah. Please, functions of DNA.
Oh, yeah, I can go back to the function of DNA over here. So DNA carries a lot of genetic information, right? So DNA stores all the instructions that are needed. So DNA has a lot of genes. Like this part can be one gene that shapes who we are, what we look like. But also DNA can control the protein production. So in the cell, this maybe certain parts can be made of a certain protein. And genes and DNA controls what proteins to make. So yeah, does that make sense?
Yes.
So
Thank
yeah,
you.
DNA, 2 proteins is 1 function. And
Thank you.
proteins, yeah, are the most important and the most basic structure. They form a structure for our body. So they're coded by the DNA. Yeah. Any other questions today?
No. Thank you.
Okay. If you don't have any questions for today, next week we will be moving on to the physics lesson for science. So next week we will move on to physics. So it'll be about Newton's laws of motion and gravitational force and potential energy and kinetic energy. All of those are in the physics lesson. But next week, another student will be presenting. It will not be me next week, but I will also join and help introduce you, all of you. And yeah, is everything clear? Are we all set for today? Do you have anything else you wanted to say?
What in fact?
So yeah, are we good? So next week, yeah, we will be learning about energy, potential energy, and kinetic energy. So yeah. Okay.
Thank you for
Okay, yeah. Thank you for listening, everyone. And I will see everyone next week. Yeah. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
I gave in.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much for today.
Yeah, you're
We'll see you
welcome.
next year.
Yeah, I'll see
You
you.
share the slide up.
Yes. Oh, yes, I will share the slides. Yeah, for today.
So, thank you very much. And I
Okay.
send my greetings to everybody.
Okay, yeah, thank you all students for listening. And yeah, I'll see you next week then. Yeah.
Yeah, see you next week. Bye-bye.
Okay, yeah, bye.